Okay. And then we have Amanda Roa, who is an environmental programs manager at Delta Diablo. And then we have our very own Joanne Brash from the California Product Stewardship Council. Okay. Slide. Okay, so just to introduce Cpsc a little bit, we're a very small team of 5, and we're primarily funded by cities and counties around California. We're interested in expanding the waste recovery programs. And so as you see by our executive board on the bottom, we're a representative of multiple cities and counties around California. And so we
Just
also
a quick note, actually, if any of the other panelists can let people in on the lobby, I actually can't right now with my screen, but if someone else could, thank you.
Got it. Okay. We also like to give thanks to all of our associates, and so we have multiple cities, counties, districts, and JPAs around California that fund us, and they're making this webinar happen today. And we also like to give thanks to our sponsors. We have multiple organizations that sponsor us at varying levels, and they're also helping making this webinar happen today alongside all of our other funders, including Cpsc. Okay. And so just to give a brief introduction to marine flares, as many of you know, marine flares are visual distress signals that are often used to help summon boats in event danger, and the U.S. Coast Guard requires them in certain waters. And so while these are required, very often they need to be replaced, and the average lifespan of a marine flare is about 42 months. However, these are very hard to dispose of, and it causes many boaters to just simply keep them in their sheds or even dispose of them improperly in regular trash ways. And for many counties that want to dispose of them, this can often be very difficult, as the transportation of these are considered hazardous waste, so they must be disposed of in very specific manners that can be very expensive. And when these are improperly disposed of, or even when they are fired off, they can often contaminate the water supply. And one of the most impactful things that they lead into the water is perchlorate, which can actually is known to cause a lot of health effects, including developmental effects. And so we've also seen a lot of misuse of marine flares during celebratory events. And while this is punishable by up to a couple $1,000s, it happens very often, especially during the 4th of July. Okay, so now we're passing off to Bruce to talk about marine flares.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thanks, Joanne. Alameda, I work for Alameda County, and Alameda County joined 3 other counties in 2016 to get a CalRecycle grant to dispose of marine flares. We weren't the first ones to do this. A lot of jurisdictions around the state had collection events for marine flares over the years, but we were the first ones to get together with not only a number of different counties at once, but also with the DTSC and also with California State Parks, Boating and Waterways. Those 2 were big stakeholders in this problem for a long time. And so we kind of worked off of their knowledge and their past experience. And the 4 counties, which was Marin County, San Mateo County, San Francisco, and Alameda County, we applied for a CalRecycle multi-jurisdiction grant. The grants were put out there by CalRecycle. For the first time, they allowed people to apply for funds to get rid of hazardous waste. In the past, disposal wasn't funding for disposal wasn't allowed. San Francisco was the first of our group to do the event, and San Mateo, and then Alameda County. Marin County dropped out after finding out how much work it was to get this kind of an event rolling. And so Alameda County did a collection event. It was 2018 by the time we got around to actually doing the collections. And since then, Alameda County and some of the other counties have been doing repeated collection events. We've used grant money to the events and even some of our own budget. Just some details about how we run the events. We do them by appointment. We were worried that would cut down on the number of participants, but it doesn't seem to. And it allows us to know in advance how many people might be showing up. There's our webpage below. The upcoming one-day event button it's easy for them to click and just make a quick appointment. We have the events have been very successful. However, our initial concerns that we'd be flooded by boaters wanting to get rid of their flares were not borne out. In fact, we have fairly low attendance on the order of 25 to 50 people every time we've run an event. You can go ahead and turn the slide. Nevertheless, we feel the events are successful. We've collected fairly large amounts of flares, which points to boaters collecting a lot of them over the years. It also perhaps points to boaters that may collect flares from their fellow boaters and bring them in. As you might imagine, that's not exactly correct, but during the events, we try not to ask too many questions. The events are funded by CalRecycle, so they can't cover commercial boaters to bring in their flares. But we just collect flares from recreational boaters. Just some stats from the events. The first event Alameda County hosted was by ourselves. The cost for the event was around $26,000. And then subsequent events, we were careful to hold them at the same day or the same weekend as another jurisdiction, San Mateo, now Delta Diablo, and that cut the cost of the event by about half, which points to most of the cost of getting rid of the flares being in transportation. The way we set these up, the flares had to be transported by a specialty explosives transportation company, and that's a very costly thing. It also points to that a big truck coming out to our site to pick up the flares. There's a lot of space on the truck, and compared to the size of the truck, we weren't shipping many flares or much in the way of waste. So the costs are there. I want to point out that it's generous of CalRecycle to help fund this, but otherwise, I just don't think a lot of jurisdictions would be wanting to pay up to 100 times, 50 to 100 times the cost of getting rid of regular household hazardous waste to collect flares from, recreational boaters. And nevertheless, there's still a lot of boaters in Alameda County. We feel that going forward, we're going to try to do our best to continue to do collection events. We're going to continue to request funds from CalRecycle to do that. With maybe 8,000 to 10,000 boaters in the county, it'll take us a while to collect their flares. And last but not least, as you can see, hosting an event with another jurisdiction like Delta Diablo cut the cost of the event in half. We're really very interested in holding events at the same time with another jurisdiction because it will cut your costs significantly. And okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Amanda Roa from Delta Diablo. So we operate the Delta Household Hazardous Waste Collection Facility that serves East Contra Costa County. And all of our partners and jurisdictions actually line pretty much the Delta on the San Joaquin River. So there are a lot of boaters, and we had talked for years about having a way to properly dispose of marine flares. I do want to give a shout out to Cpsc because with their assistance, we applied for HD 35 grant to hold some marine flare collection events. And also an extreme shout out to Bruce and the other jurisdictions who had done it before us, because I think every time a jurisdiction does one of these events, it gets a little easier and a little easier. It's still work, but we definitely were able to learn from Bruce's and others' experiences and getting the permits and just getting advice and how to outreach to boaters and what to tell them. So that was all extremely helpful. We have put a marine flare section on our website now. We did hold a collection event in November, and I think you can advance to the next slide. We kind of did it probably came up on us closer than we were expecting. So we sort of threw the event together to coordinate with Bruce's event. And he had recommended doing it in November, sort of the close of the boating season when people might be, winterizing their boat and getting ready to have marine flares available for disposal. So we coordinated the event date with Alameda. We didn't have a huge amount of participation. So actually that picture is all the marine flares that we collected on that day. I think we only actually had 10 vehicles come in. However, I think it still was successful. That's a lot of flares to get out of the waste stream. And in, learning from Bruce's experiences, the more regularly he has seemed to host these events, the more familiar people are with the opportunity to dispose of them. And I think he's collected more flares. We also had, like he said, from the state parks, they did a lot of outreach to voters, and I think partnering together definitely helped us. We're a bit short-staffed now. We don't actually have outreach staff, and we don't have a huge household hazardous waste staff to begin with. So partnering with Cpsc and Alameda and the state parks was of extreme benefit to us. So if you look at our cost, this was our first event, and so our price per flare was considerably higher than Bruce's, although I think he started out this way too, and it's gotten cheaper as he's gone along. So I am hopeful that that will happen with us the more that we can partner with other jurisdictions. So I think I'll pass it back to Joanne to talk about how we might partner with others.
Amanda. So I'm going to speak to and for the other jurisdictions that are going to be joining in our 2022 event. So we have Del Norte County, who also has an HD grant. They also wanted to join in on the November event, but we found some challenges specifically with that 8-hour drive. And in order to actually save money for everyone, we had to work closely with Clean Harbors and our vendor to ensure that the drive was incorporated and fairly split and charged to Del Norte. So we are excited to get them on board for this year. And as Amanda said, the more events we do, the easier it is to really get to understand the process of all the different special permits, the transportation permits, and making sure the contract with our hauler is set but for each jurisdiction who pays them directly. This year, we also are excited to be working with West Contra Costa, and who's also known as Recycle More. This is also a jurisdiction just north of Delta Diablo. There are also some marinas and harbors in this area, in this jurisdiction. So again, as we work together for our annual events and collection events, we will be adding more jurisdictions to not only save money, but to really kind of have that continual annual reminder of you're winterizing your boat, you're cleaning out your garage. So let's have it kind of be a repeated date. We find is the best communication and building that habit. One of the challenges that we heard across the jurisdictions was the limited opportunities they had to develop their own education and outreach, especially to support the education of marine flare safety and the safer alternatives. So that's what Cpsc does best is building educational campaigns. So here you can see our most recent website that we have on the Cpsc page. And on this website, you can see all the different jurisdictions participating. Once we have the final date and the ways to sign up and to participate locally, this is where they'll be kind of put all together. We also have a new marine flare listserv where if anyone wants to be added to that listserv, go ahead and contact me. And that's where we send our announcements first to our listservs. And part of what Cpsc did in developing this education is really tapping into the different channels to reach the boaters. Typically in our other campaigns, we rely so heavily on social media, but what we found is with this particular community, they're not always plugged in to the most social media networks. So finding alternative ways and the more traditional ways to educate and outreach has been really successful. So we are in works to develop a county-wide postcard that we'll be sending directly to each registered boater to let them know about the November event and also let them know that there is an alternative, a reusable alternative. The other thing that we're really looking at is to actually walk the docks. So dock walking is a really common way to interact with the boaters. So starting this May into the end of the summer, we'll be at all the marinas throughout the Bay Area and hopefully up in Crescent City as well, walking the docks, talking to the boaters, and actually showing them the reusable alternative, because having that visual and having that face-to-face interaction is really just one of the best methods of educating. And so why do we care about marine flares, and why should the boaters care about marine flares? And at the end of the day, there is no affordable option and no ongoing permanent collection opportunity for this product. So we know it expires and we know they have nowhere to take them. And these have really toxic chemicals in them. Perchlorate has been regulated and banned in other products, but yet it remains in this one. And it's a similar product to that's in like fireworks and other explosives. So it's really important to treat these products as the hazardous waste that they are. And so we know that there's no technology to completely remove perchlorate from the water. So prevention is ultimately the best option. The other thing that we've been learning as we start communicating with the boaters and asking them, well, what happens if there is no disposal option? And what we hear across the board is they just set them off, especially during 4th of July. But given the increased wildfires and the fire risks in our communities, we're really urging our boaters to not take that risk. But not only is there fire risk associated, but we're also talking about injury risk, if it burns you, if it explodes unpredictably. And we've also heard that the Coast Guard might take them for some of their training days. But as we started working with the Coast Guard, that really wasn't an option when we started dealing with larger volumes and more consistent volumes of unwanted marine flares. So we really wanted to look into the options and look into what we could do to offer the community the safe, convenient collection that they needed. So one of the best alternatives and way cheaper than actually establishing an ongoing collection program is to actually promote the reusable alternative. Currently, there's only one brand who is Coast Guard approved to replace one of your 3 mandatory marine flares. This brand, Sirius Signal, is present online and in several stores throughout the state. They have several different models, all of which are Coast Guard approved, and they don't expire. Meaning the single-use perchlorate, explosive ones, every 42 months, you have to replace them to ensure they're going to safely work. With these devices, you can actually test them before you leave your marina slip. So they're battery operated, the batteries are removable, so you can always have a backup set. There's other really awesome perks about this product. So you can test it before you go. Because there's no explosive sparks, they're actually safer, especially if you're on an inflatable dinghy. They float. So as scary as it might sound, if your boat sinks or if you are floating in the water, this safety device will float with you. It does not require any special training. And so far, this one product has kept over 2 million single-use alternatives out of the environment. So you can buy these products either online, it's probably the best bet, or call your local retailer and ask if they're willing to carry them. There are challenges though, we'll get into those, but first we want to talk about some alternatives and some opportunities to get a free device. So at each of the collection events at the local jurisdictions, we'll be giving out free electronic visual distress signals. So for each of the boaters that we are attending those events, we can hand them device and immediately see a source reduction, because as soon as they receive that device, they no longer have to keep buying as many single-use explosive ones. So if you go to our website, that's where you'll find the dates of the future events once they're posted. But I do want to take an opportunity to actually give one away today. So Cpsc, we have some in our office, and I will be putting it in the mail. So what I wanted to do right now, and actually my staff, Yalin, is going to check. She's going to open our Instagram page. And the first person to follow us on Instagram right now will get a free device that I will send it to you in the mail. Even if you're a jurisdiction, this is a great opportunity if you have boating or boothing events, educational events. And so Yalin, go ahead and take yourself off mute as soon as there's someone who has followed us, and let us know who the winner is. I'll let you know also that these devices retail for $89. So that's, again, something that Cpsc is willing to give out for free right now. Yalin, do we have any followers? I'll just take a quick check too. So follow Cpsc at CalPSC, and you can find us on Instagram. And as soon as we find someone who follows us, we'll put it in the chat, we'll reach out to you, and we'll get your address privately to make sure that we can get you. Oh, look at, we have quite a few. Libby Ruan. So I think that's Elizabeth Ruan. I will email you directly, and I will make sure that that gets sent directly to your office. So thank you, everyone. That was really fun. And we also want to give a big thank you to Boat Foundation USA. Without their sponsorship and support, we wouldn't have been able to buy as many devices as we have. So as we plan for future events, we're basically inviting everyone on this call and any of the jurisdictions who want to participate to get a hold of us. The more jurisdictions who can plan November events, the more money we save across the board, the less the cost per flare that we can keep those costs low. So again, we want to keep them in November for consistency, to build that habit building and to build that education. That gives us the whole summer to work with boaters and to do that outreach to make sure they're prepared for those November events. So when they come to the events, they can, again, exchange the single use, get the free reusable, and our events have been so successful and borderline fun with the support of some of our other sponsors. So in addition to CalRecycle, in addition to the jurisdictions who work with us, we do want to say thank you to Boat Foundation USA, California State Parks, and also the California Coastal Commission, who also have vested interests in keeping marine flares out of our water and out of the risks of causing fires or damage. But the challenges of creating these ongoing programs and ongoing events is the cost. So we know that boaters are paying about $7 to $10 per single-use flare, and we know that they expire every 42 months. So that creates a constant stream of explosive HHW. And with no permanent program, we really don't know where these flares are going. So we know that the cost per disposal is about $12 to $50 per flare. We know that we can get it closer to 12 by having more jurisdictions participate, but these costs are not inclusive of the total cost of the event, right? In addition to the disposal costs, you have costs of planning the event. You have costs of promotion and outreach. We give enough money to Zuckerberg and Instagram that we know that we are spending a lot more than the $12 to $50 per flare. So finding the most effective ways to promote these events and to plan them saves money all around. So one of the other challenges related to cost is the cost of the reusable. So we know that the lower end device retails at $89. The higher end device, which has multiple colors and Bluetooth and a couple other awesome features, retails closer to $140, maybe more. But that's a really big barrier when we know that they're paying $7 to $10 for the single use. That's almost 8 times the cost for a reusable. The other challenge with the reusable is that our grant rules actually limit the incentive payments to $20. So even if we're given a discount and wholesale, so thank you, Sirius Signal, for that, our grant funds still can't cover the entire cost of the device. So that's what really motivated us to reach out, find other sponsors, and find other partners so that we can physically buy the devices and hand them to the boaters. In the past, jurisdictions have tried coupons, discount codes, and what we found was they really were not redeeming them. Even with the discount, that additional cost was still a barrier because the additional cost was still higher than the $7 to $10 per single-use flare. So it's with those partnerships and sponsorships that we're able to buy the devices and physically hand them. The feedback we're getting is positive across the board. We are hearing that boaters like the alternative. They're interested in the higher end one. So what we've really done is working with Sirius Signal, we're giving out the lower cost, lower end device, but offering a discount on the upgrade. And we have heard from several boaters that they are interested in doing that upgrade. So as we see more companies creating these electronic visual distress signals, we see the future being more competitive. We see the future having better features and more innovative functionalities of these reusable alternatives. But right now, the brand that's on the market is really superior to the single-use alternative. So we're really happy that our campaign and these grants not only cover the collection events, but really promoting the alternative as a safer, more convenient option. But when we talk about, beyond the grant, beyond these kind of singular collection events, we really want to look at, how do we create an ongoing program, especially if we look at either the state level or the multi-jurisdictional level so that they can continue to work together. The goals of introducing a new policy would really be to save the local government money. We know that people like jurisdictions like Bruce are paying out of pocket once their grant has ended. And they want to continue to host these events, but in a manner that doesn't cause them to increase their garbage rates, or in a manner that has any additional cost burdens on the boaters. We want to make sure that no matter what happens, the future policy addresses the fire risks and addresses the health risks from one product to the other. So there's a couple different options that are on the table that are being considered for state level and even considering at the local level too, which would be a couple options I'll go through. So one of them would be just to phase out the single-use pyrotechnics. Whether it's a ban or a phase out, we know that if there is a safer alternative and there is some toxic issues with the single use, we could lean towards technology and innovation as to a comparable alternative and phase out the less effective single-use ones. The other option would be to have state government continue to sponsor these events and continue to help coordinate collection, provide grants. But again, these are state funded, so it's going to come directly out of CalRecycle's budget. And so we want to make sure, again, if more and more jurisdictions want to join in, it's not more competitive for the grants and it's not more expensive for CalRecycle. We want to share the effective collection methods, but also share the cost burdens with the companies who are actually profiting off these products, but not sharing the burden with the collection. So that takes us to a third option, which is extended producer responsibility. What we have here on the slide is what Cpsc has trademarked as our stewardship spectrum. So this is giving you a visual idea of how extended producer responsibility works in a spectrum. So on the left side of the spectrum is true EPR. True EPR is 100% industry funded and 100% industry managed, which means the money never goes to the state and the materials never go to the state. The industry run group will fund the collection, plan the events, and actually cover the disposal costs. That's what true EPR does. But we know in the reality of politics and passing effective policy, sometimes there are different variations and different levels of responsibility added to the policy. So the other side of the spectrum is what we call product stewardship. Product stewardship usually has little to no industry money actually going into the program. Product stewardship can maybe be a collaborative or voluntary program. It could also be something that addresses a specific barrier. Maybe it addresses labeling, or maybe it addresses just the explosiveness. But either way, when you look at the spectrum of opportunities, we know that a future policy option would definitely best be incorporative of the industry funding and industry engagement. If we solely rely on local government and state government to continue these programs, we know they're going to be an increase in cost without a solution in sight. So without industry engagement, we just see it as a growing cost burden. So future policy options should definitely engage the industry through funding and green design changes. But there's plenty of ways to get involved with the Marine Flair movement. First of all, you can contact Cpsc. We are kind of coordinating all the different jurisdictions to make sure everyone has the strategy information, the permit information, and everything they need to join in a November event. If you want to collect marine flares, everyone saves money to host those events. You can gain direct access to the free reusable LED marine flares, even if you don't have an active grant. Working with Cpsc, we can ensure that you have some devices on hand to give them out at your event. We're able to track costs and track impact across multiple jurisdictions. Obviously, reporting our metrics to our grant is definitely a required component. But as we get more and more jurisdictions, we're able to kind of look at trends and community-wide impacts that we are able to aggregate across jurisdictions. And the other thing is really coordinating advocacy. As we learn from each event and as we engage more stakeholders, there's more opportunities to have the multiple stakeholders get involved in these long-term solutions. So whether it's developing a policy, developing more grant guidelines and requests and proposals, there's a lot of room for different stakeholders to get involved. So go ahead and contact Cpsc and we can point you in the right direction. The other thing that we can always do is apply for a grant together. So if you are a local jurisdiction in California, we can go to CalRecycle, apply together. If you're not a jurisdiction in California, or maybe you represent a private marina or other types of entities, Cpsc has a long list of other funding sources that we can apply together, and it doesn't have to be CalRecycle. So again, whoever's on the call today, I know we have multiple different types of stakeholders attending today. Contact us and we can apply for grants together. Cpsc has a couple other grants in the pipeline that are not CalRecycle grants, which allow us different rules, different opportunities to kind of supplement the different grants funding types. The other option for any of the boaters on the call is just to buy a reusable marine flare today. Immediate source reduction, immediate satisfaction because they're really fun and they are really cool devices. Everyone around you in the marina will be asking you. So whether it's for education or personal use, we have found since we started taking the marine flares to our conferences and our boothing events and the marinas that we attend, that people are legitimately interested and have maybe never seen these devices. So like I said, showing them and actually giving them the visual, they can hold the device, has been really successful in the last few years. So we really wanted to get an opportunity to either buy one today for personal use or for your own educational outreach. For those of you on the call, you can contact us to see if you qualify for a free or a discounted LED device based on where you are and how many we have available. So go ahead and contact us today. And the fourth option is really just joining our listserv. This is the first place where we announce events, where we announce giveaways, where we announce new videos we're making. So again, a really good opportunity to stay in the know and to stay up to date. is to join our listservs. So at this point, you know, we're ahead of time, which is always good, but we really wanted to open it up to questions and to really have an opportunity to kind of discuss in more detail. If there's any specific questions anyone has or comments, now would be a really good time to ask them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can go back to this screen. And the way it's going to work is if anyone has questions, you can either ask them in the chat or you can raise your hand. So first thing we're going to do is let's go into the chat to read the first ones that came through, and then we'll go and unmute some of the people with their hands raised. So we see Alan posted the Instagram, and thank you, Elizabeth. Heidi, thanks for this information. It's proof that the system is insane. Taxpayers do not want to pay 100 times the cost. Absolutely. Why should the ratepayers without boats pay for the cost of each boaters? Absolutely. This is an environmental justice issue and an unfair cost burden. So things like banning the sale or even an extended producer responsibility policy would be one method of actually incorporating some of these externalized costs and unfair burdens that have been put on some of our community members with the current system. Does everyone want to make a comment on the HHW grant program to Cal Recycle to increase from $20 to something much higher? We have reached out, we have asked for exemptions, and so far we have not actually been approved for that. So one of the opportunities that Cal Recycle does is every few years before they release their RFPs, they do a survey. And with that survey is the best way to actually communicate that. So it's not just coming from Cpsc, but actually across the jurisdictions and across the board. So completing that survey and specifically requesting things like more collection and increasing the $20 incentive limit is a really good way to communicate that. Is the goal to save government money or is it to reduce toxics? I would argue it's to reduce toxics first, then save local government money. Perchlorate is nasty stuff and has no business being sold when there are safer alternatives. Removing toxics from the system is rule number one to achieve a circular economy. To me, this is an easy decision. Source reduction and a ban is priority number one. Anything less will be less effective and a delay. Yes, and we actually see this in the active legislation when we see that when there are toxic products with safer alternatives, bans tend to be successful at the state legislature. So we see that with some of the PFAS and the other toxics in that area. And I believe there's even some on things like fluorescent lamps that are going through the current legislature. So absolutely, reducing toxics and removing those products is definitely a more effective solution than actually continuing the collection and continuing the sale of a product that we know has a safer alternative. I know when we first started talking about these events, see, Courtney. I know when we first started talking about these events, we were discussing the best location. Are all the events located at the HHW facilities or any hosted at marinas? We have found, we would love to start doing them at marinas, but we found that one of the biggest challenges is the insurance. So there has to be a $5 million pollution prevention clause within the insurance in order to collect them. Most of the HHW facilities already have this insurance. And so we are working with different marinas and harbors around the state to see the opportunities to collect, but there are certain challenges right now in doing that. It's not off the table though. We are hoping maybe this November, at least one of the events might be at a marina, but we're happy to share back what we learn as we reach out. Bruce, did you have anything you wanted to add on the marina collection idea?
Thank you. Yeah, I see Huey's hands up, so he could probably comment on there. By the way, excuse me, Huey Lee at SF Environment and Elizabeth Rowan in San Mateo were a big part of the original, you know, the grant that Alameda County and those other jurisdictions did. Without them, it wouldn't have happened at all. But both SF Environment and San Mateo held events at marinas quite successfully. So it's always possible. It's a little less complicated to hold an event at a household hazardous waste facility that is already in operation and perhaps requires less of a permitting hurdle.
Thank you, Huey. And you have your mic and camera has been enabled. So go ahead and unmute, and we're happy to take your comments and questions.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great presentation. So just a couple of comments. So yes, we were one of the jurisdictions that had it at the marina. It made more sense for us, mainly for transportation concerns. Our facility is kind of located away from everything, away from all the boaters, so it just made sense for us. And we were able to partner with, I believe, Rec and Park, who site was located near one of the marinas. And so they said, hey, just use our site. And so it was a no-brainer. So just going to quickly comment about the electronic flare. So one of the downsides of that is that it's not approved for international waters. So it is used only for local waters, if that makes sense. And then also my second comment is about outreach. Outreach is extremely important to really get a big turnout. But because a lot of these grants are very limited and the high cost of collection disposal, it's difficult to set aside funds for outreach. And so there are a lot of opportunities out there. What we found was that a lot of marinas are willing to assist you in any way. And so the way we approached outreach was that we partnered with a port, local marina programs, newsletters, and they all were happy to do outreach for free. We've also posted signage at all the entrances to the marinas so that when boaters go, they see the sign. And I think timing is also absolutely important. I think you mentioned doing an event at the end of the boating season. I think we did it at the beginning of the season, what they call opening day at the bay, and we kind of view that as kind of spring cleaning. So before their boaters are getting ready for the season, they're cleaning out their stuff. So just a couple of things to consider if you are thinking about doing an event, and I'm happy to assist in any way I can too, because I think this is a very important topic to address.
Thank you so much, Huey. Jesus, your hand is up and your mic has been enabled. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, Joanne. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for putting this together. First of all, I just want to start by thanking you, Joanne and Bruce, for all your help. We are tentatively scheduled to hold our first marine flare collection event in Orange County. This hasn't happened for over 11 years with different staff that was here. So it was there was a lot of learning that we needed to do, and we're still going through. And so thanks again for all your help. Question on the electronic marine flares. Are they? You kind of talked a little bit about this, but are boaters open to them, or are they just not informed as to the benefits of owning one? And so if we were to go this route, would they be open to switching from the traditional flares or to the electronic ones?
I think I can answer that as a yes. We've heard really good feedback. I know that some of the things that we've heard, not only are the costs a barrier, is sometimes in really thick fog. We've heard maybe it's not as bright, but across the board, we've heard that people are adopting them and do think it's a superior alternative to the single use. I don't see anyone from Sirius Signal on the call today, but I'm happy to share any questions we have with them or any feedback they have. Do any of the other panelists want to chime in?
Okay, I do have a few other questions.
Yeah.
And then for maybe this is a question more for Bruce. Did you find, Bruce, that you had folks who were intending to drop off marine flares who were business owners, or were these traditionally just boaters that were coming to the events?
Am I on?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And I'm sure Huey and other people that have run these events could chime in. I'm answering, I hope they would agree. As a household hazardous waste program, we put out the word that we're taking flares from basically households. So, recreational boaters, not commercial. The truth is that, sometimes there's a gray area there. And, I think in practice, we do our best to keep businesses from signing up and showing up. But if somebody comes in and says, well, yeah, it's from my, my use, maybe they're a club, or maybe they're somebody that educates kids to do boating, safe boating. I think in practice, we've probably taken flares from organizations, certainly. This is just part of being an HHW. Sometimes if people tell you what they're supposed to, if they say what they're supposed to say, then you take it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree on that too. Sorry, this is San Francisco. And so we did get a number of clubs who said they collected flares on behalf of their group. And so I'm sure they've brought it to our event.
Okay, I don't want to take up any more time, but just last question. Can you, Joanne, speak a little bit more on the pollution prevention insurance? This is the first time I've heard about that.
Yeah, so pollution prevention insurance should just be a clause under your general liability. And the $5 million coverage is usually the minimum of what Clean Harbors wants. So what we found was it was easier for Clean Harbors to contract directly with the HHW. Cpsc, we don't have that coverage. So usually a facility already has that. It's not unique to marine flares, but without that pollution prevention coverage, it makes it challenging to get into contract. But it's basically to prevent spills, fires, anything from contaminating with pollution. Yeah, Bruce?
Just a comment. Running an event at a marina is the same as running a temporary household hazardous waste collection facility at a parking lot, somewhere. And many of our state, many of the household hazardous waste programs run temporary events around their jurisdiction, and those insurance requirements are the same for running a temporary event. But they're still, as Joanne mentions, sometimes getting that contract in place between the agency, the household hazardous waste program agency, and the owner of the property. Sometimes it gets sticky, and it can actually be a burden. So it's not only the insurance, but getting the documents signed. Because those locations, those marinas or whoever it might be, they do want to be protected from any potential risk.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're welcome to ask more questions. There's no limit. We still have plenty of time. I do see some in the chat, though, so I'm going to turn over and read from Dirk Jensen. We have, do the single-use marine flare Cpsc resources and local collection events cover both recreational and commercial boaters? So the answer is no, it's just recreational boaters. Commercial boaters do have different requirements for the type and amount of marine flares they are required to carry. And additionally, an HHW facility and our grants are really limited to residential. So as Bruce mentioned, there's a little gray area if there's maybe a nonprofit or a local cleanup group or yacht group who does collect on behalf of other boaters, but we do not accept commercial flares for disposal. Anyone want to add to that? Okay, the next question is, do you have any ads for the flares that we can put in local yacht club, marina newsletters? Yeah, so that's part of what CPSC does and part of our campaign work. So we are developing not only outreach materials, so we have social media graphics, we have videos, reels. We're trying to get into reels. We have to stay relevant. We have newsletters, we have template emails, we have all sorts of different outreach opportunities. As mentioned before, we are in process of designing a postcard to go out this summer. And also we have trifold brochures, all sorts of things. So Marie, if you want to contact me, we can arrange an agreement to share those with you. If anyone else is interested in getting access to those content, go ahead and contact me. For those of you who are already funders, we get more than happy to share those freely. And for those who aren't, we can discuss some opportunities to collaborate. Are there any other questions or comments that we have on marine flares? And Jose, now's a good time if you have more questions. I'm sure everyone benefits from hearing you ask.
No, one suggestion though, I think it would be a good idea to maybe have some sort of a template or guidance document on how to apply for a DOT permit to be able to hold a marine flare collection event that is not at the HHW facility. And I know that Bruce has been very, very helpful with this for us here in Orange County, and we're still waiting for a response from the DOT. But that was something that was very new to us, and so we just want to thank him for that.
Absolutely. And we also want to thank Bruce because it's with his strategy doc. We were able to use grant funds and expand it out. So we've taken the strategy doc and added outreach sections, and we added reporting sections. But it sounds like a really good idea to maybe add something specifically to having marina or offsite events. But within that strategy document, there are links to the DOT process to get the special permit, as well as updating your PBRs. Don't ask me what that stands for, but I know that everyone who was participating had to update their PBRs and work with their CUPA. So yeah, we're absolutely willing to work with you and share that strategy doc, which was built off of Bruce's initial input. So thank you.
So yes, we used it for planning our event, and it was really helpful. And I think we can refine it as we go along.
Just a comment, that was not my document. I believe Huey wrote most of it. If not, Huey and Elizabeth and I, you know, the original grant we got from Cal Recycle was collaborative, and like I said, without all three of us putting in a ton of work, and supporting each other, it wouldn't have happened. So
thank you for those
leaders. Thank Huey for that one. I'm on the other hand, I do want to say I'm personally happy to, I got a lot out of this. I benefited from a lot of work from a lot of people, including San Mateo, San Francisco, and also Vivian Mattook at State Parks, Boating and Waterways, as well as many others. So I'm willing to help people out. I feel I got a lot of help. We all got a lot of help, so I'm willing to pass that on.
Thank you. And in our final moments, I'm just going to share my screen again, just so everyone can see all the contact information for everyone who was on the panel today. Again, everyone has offered some assistance, whether you are looking to plan an event this year or next, partnering with a grant, or even just get more information on the reusable alternatives. We're all here to help you and assist. So if there's no further questions, we will hold the floor for just a few more minutes, but feel free to ask in the chat or raise your hand. Otherwise, we are here to contact and work together in the future. Great. So seeing none, I would just want to thank everyone for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And if you have any questions, again, we're here to assist, and thank you again. Bye, everyone.